How can we support LifeLink in our schools beyond fundraising?
I think one of the ways will be when you go back to the school from this event today to talk to your friends about what you did, the sorts of things that you heard, and gradually, you can be influencing perhaps by what you're saying to them. I think also by using the website that we explained to you at the beginning, there may be questions that you hear from other students about what are these agencies and what do they do? You can find out a lot of that information from the website, and also you can use the website to perhaps look at ideas that you might be able to develop in giving people more and more information about what LifeLink is itself. So I guess that's the most important thing, is just getting the word out there so more and more people know what LifeLink is, and really what are the major objectives that we have for LifeLink, some of those things that I explained earlier.
What's the most creative thing you've seen done at a school to fundraise for LifeLink Day?
I think that one of the things which we took up in the primary schools last year was the making of paper chains, and each of the links in those chain represented a donation that had been made by a student or a teacher in the school. And they were able to make a chain of links that went almost the length of the school. So it was really a very simple little thing that they did. But the idea caught on, and nearly all of our primary schools did the same sort of thing last year. And we're hoping to bring them all together this year, I think at Lake Munga, and we're going to hopefully put all those chains together just to show to each school the number of people who have been doing the same sort of work, and encourage more and more to take it on. So that was one very simple little thing, but it took on and become quite a successful way of promoting LifeLink, but also in a fun way, raising funds.
What is the best part of about being the Archbishop and about being a bishop?
Well, I'll go first. It's kind of a difficult question to answer in some ways. I've been the Archbishop now for 4 years, and so I've got 4 years of experience behind me. You might think that what I'm going to say now is the sort of thing that I would be expected to say because I'm with a whole pile of young people. So I just need to explain that before I became a priest, I'd already decided that I wanted to be a teacher. So that was kind of my choice of career, and all of my life, really, since I graduated from Teachers College, has been involved in education in one way or another. And so I can honestly say that one of the best things about my role as the Archbishop is the chance to come to things like this. I love coming to this each year. This year it won't be possible, but in the previous couple of years, also here in the auditorium here at Arranmore, we had a great big seminar for Year 12 students that I was able to share some ideas about their Year 12 course. I try and get around to as many schools as I can, both the primary schools and the secondary schools. So I really enjoy that side of things. I'm also very fortunate, Bishop Sproxton too, we're both travelling to Poland in July for World Youth Day. So altogether, I think there's probably around 200 young people, older than most of you guys, but in their late teens, early 20s, mid-20s, going with different groups, but from Perth to Poland. So that'll be exciting. I find being with young people and just being with your energy and your enthusiasm and sharing your hopes and dreams for the future. That's one of the best things for me as the Archbishop. So over to Bishop Don.
I've been a bishop here in Perth for nearly 14 years. So I've had the opportunity in that time to visit practically every school and to visit each parish. And I think both the Archbishop and I have this really positive feeling when we come back from those visits, about what's happening in our local church communities and parishes and all the different types of communities that there are in the parishes, which include the schools. So it's really wonderful to see the great commitment by so many people to bring the gospel alive in all of those different communities. So it's encouraging, I think, for us, because that's really what we're meant to be doing. We're meant to be setting a sort of a vision for the diocese. The Archbishop's primary responsibility is to do that and to bring people along with him in that vision. And in that sense, I help him to implement that vision and to bring people with us with that vision of creating communities that are welcoming and vital and are absolutely focused on bringing Jesus into the lives of more and more people, helping people understand what Jesus was about and what his message can bring by way of hope for people's lives. So that sort of work really gives me a great deal of encouragement and energy and life. As the Archbishop has just mentioned, we'll both be going to Poland, and that's something that I've been able to be part of over these years. I've been on, I think, 4 or 5 World Day pilgrimages now, each one very different. Different groups of young people going with us. So 1 or 2 of the teachers here who have been on those pilgrimages with us. And again, having that opportunity to spend 2 or 3 weeks with a group of young people and getting to know them very well and learning so much about the world that they see, that they're part of, which was very different, or is very different, to the world in which I grew up. So it's wonderful just to have that chance just to get to know them and to get their impressions about living today and trying to live with their faith today. So thank you.
Our school is taking every year group to the North Perth Monastery on a mini pilgrimage to the Holy Door. As bishops, how many holy doors do you plan to make pilgrimage to during the Year of Mercy?
Well, I'll answer first. Bishop Don can have a go then, but that's an interesting question. Some of you may not be aware, but one of the things that Pope Francis did when he instituted this special Jubilee Year of Mercy was that he opened a special door into St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and it's only ever opened during a holy year. Don't know, some of you may have been to St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and if you have, you'll know you generally go in not through the main door, because that's sort of reserved for the Pope, but there are 2 side doors, and you go in one and you go out the other one in that basilica. But next to one of those side doors is this gigantic big bronze door, and it's only ever opened for a holy year. And in fact, when it's not the holy year, it all gets bricked up. So when they open the holy door, they've got to break down all the mortar and get rid of the bricks and open up this holy door. And the idea of the holy door is kind of a symbol of the desire to make a bit of a pilgrimage, a bit of a journey, go through the door as a sign of our willingness to enter into this whole spirit of the Year of Mercy. Well, this year, the Pope, very wisely, I think, and very realistically, understood that most people won't be able to go to Rome, so he asked every local diocese to make sure they had a holy door in the cathedral. So those of you who've been to St Mary's in Perth will know that normally when you go into St Mary's, you go in from two side doors, but there is a very beautiful glass and metalwork door, which is the main door of the cathedral. It's hardly ever used, but this year it's open all year, and that's our holy door. The bishop also had a chance to nominate a few other places for holy doors, and the monastery at North Perth is one of them. There's the church in Kalgoorlie has a holy door. The monastery up at New Norcia has a holy door. The convent of the Carmelite Sisters in Nedlands has a holy door. The Basilica of St Patrick's in Fremantle has a holy door. The parish at Whitfords, I think, Bishop Don, has a holy door. And I'm not sure, are there any others? That might be about it. So that at least there's a chance for people who perhaps can't get into the city, but live in those areas, to make a special pilgrimage and go through that holy door as a way of indicating their willingness to enter into the whole spirit of the thing. I was in Melbourne recently, and I was celebrating Mass in the cathedral there with the Archbishop of Melbourne, but for some reason or another their holy door was closed, so I didn't get to go through the holy door in Melbourne. I must write to the Archbishop and point that out to him, I think. When we go to Rome, as Bishop Don and I will be doing on our way to Poland, we're going to go through Italy, so we'll have a chance, and all of the young people who come with us, to go through the holy door in St Peter's Basilica. I'm sure there'll be holy doors in Poland that we'll be probably going through, so I'm not too sure how many I'll get to, but it's such a simple thing, isn't it, to walk through a doorway, but it has a lot of meaning if you sort of go with the right frame of mind. It's just a sign of your willingness to enter into the whole spirit of this holy door. So I would hope I'll get through quite a few in the course of the year. This year's Year of Mercy, it finishes in November, I think. Yes, so we've got a few months to get in a few extra holy doors before the end of the year.
Have you met many people who have received assistance from LifeLink, and how has this impacted your life?
The community that we saw on that video is one that I've visited in the last couple of years, and I went there because they wanted to show me some plans that they had made for building some more houses where they could accommodate some more people, and even to increase the, I suppose, the quality of the accommodation. And I was very impressed by the fact that there were so many people who were wanting to help them, builders and architects and engineers, giving their time and labour really for nothing. So that impressed me, I think, the numbers of people who were prepared to help with these projects. But then I had the chance also to meet some of the people who were living in the present units that they have, and I don't think they were prepped, but they came up to me. A few of them came up to me and thanked me as though I'd been the one who came up with a great idea and all of this. But it was not my idea, but it's something that we've been really wanting to support. Thanking us for the fact that they not only had a place to live, but it was a place where they really felt that they were accepted and that they really were loved. It was a real family. As you realise, the people who we help there are people who've got, say, some form of mental illness, or some of them have a problem intellectually because they've had an accident. They've had brain damage or something like that through an accident or through an illness. So when their families are no longer able to look after them, or if something goes wrong and they can't stay with their families, some of them were living on the streets and they had no one to look after them, no one to check on whether they were getting their medications as they should. And some of them were being put into jail because of what they were doing, because they weren't on medications. So this has really been a tremendous haven for people where not only do they feel part of a little community, feel part of a family, but they're actually being looked after in very practical ways. So, no, it was a great chance to meet them. Yeah.
I might just add something to that. I have been out to the same community, Emmaus community, recently. Not very long ago, just around Christmas time, I was also out at the Emmanuel Centre, which is a place that helps people with who are deaf or hearing impaired. I went sometime last year, to bless and open the new building for Centre Care Employment and Training. The thing that strikes me when I go to these places, I used the word large-hearted in my talk to you this morning, and I think that sums up the attitude of the staff in all of these places and the volunteers who work there. The other word that comes to my mind, and Emmaus is a really good example of this, so is the Emmanuel Centre, and so are all of the other agencies. The other word is hospitality. You know, people gravitate to these places because they feel really welcome, they feel valued, they can just be themselves, they don't have to put on a show or anything like that. And I think that's really what I was trying to get at when I was talking about that story of Jesus and Zacchaeus. You know, a good word for that story, it's a story about hospitality. In one sense, you think Zacchaeus is offering hospitality to Jesus because he's going to have his dinner with him. But in another way, in a truer way, it's really Jesus who's offering hospitality to Zacchaeus. You know, that capacity just to welcome people, accept them as they are, make them feel valued, not judge them. These are really important things. And you go to any of our agencies, and that's what you see in both staff who work there, who are employed there, and also, because there's normally an army of volunteers who also work in these places, there's a tremendous spirit of acceptance and not judging people. You know, I think it's a great thing. And that's they're kinds of attitudes, you know, they're attitudes of the heart. And I reckon they're attitudes that can be easily translated into a school community. You know, as I said before, I trained as a teacher. I taught in primary schools for a little while, but most of my career was in secondary schools. Schools are places where you can show tremendous hospitality to the other students, the other kids in the school. They can also be places where we don't show such great hospitality to people, sometimes if they're different or if they're, you know, a little bit unusual or they don't fit into our normal social circle or something like that. I reckon hospitality, that welcoming, accepting approach is really a key thing. And that's what I've learned by going to these agencies. You know, it's in a sense, it's all very well for people like Bishop Sproxton and I to stand up here and talk about all of this theory. You go into those places and you actually see it in practice. But I reckon you'd probably see it in your schools too. Hopefully, you know, in the way that you as students are welcomed and made to feel at home and valued by each other and by the staff. So I think it's one of the great features of our Catholic education system. So, you know, I said before, take home the idea of large-heartedness. You could tack onto it hospitality as well. I think if you had those kinds of ideas at the heart of what you were on about, it would really transform our schools from what they already are, as Dr. McDonald said, already places where this is happening, to places where it's kind of so striking that everybody comments on it. That'd be fantastic if that were to happen.
Are there volunteer opportunities available to support LifeLink agencies?
I think Shopfront has been one of those agencies that has received a lot of support from schools. I know Sacred Heart College, for example, at Sorrento has done a tremendous amount of work, and there are other schools as well. There are some schools here I know have also done some work in supporting them. It's not always easy to have young people actually give hours of service to an agency because of the type of work that they do, and really even the people who go to them. Shopfront is an example. So there are limits, I suppose, on how much personal involvement that you can have. But that's something that can be worked out between the agency and the school as to what's appropriate and how you might be able to give some voluntary hours to a work that they're doing. So I think it's a possibility in some of these cases. I'm pretty sure that the Emmaus community would be open to a bit of dialogue with schools, if there were opportunities there to help with certain functions that they might have. I think there are possibilities, but there are, I think, very practical ways of support that have been given by schools already. Yeah.
Bishop, could I just add, sorry, I should have introduced myself before. I manage LifeLink. One of the challenges for us in many schools have wanted to be engaged with our agencies. And unfortunately, fortunately, we have a lot of statutory, which is legal requirements, that we have to look at when we do that. First of all, there is the client's privacy, and many of the clients who attend our organisations like Senecare, Identity WA, those sorts of organisations, the work they do, I guess, is private and personal to the individual clients they seek to help. So there's an issue there. In regards to the shopfront, which has had a tremendous amount of support from the schools, and I know many schools would like to go there and volunteer. Unfortunately, it's not an environment, because shopfront very much is dealing with men and women who may have mental health issues, may have drug and alcohol addiction issues, can be homeless. There is I guess, an opportunity for violence in those environments. And so as a duty of care through Catholic education and the Archbishop in particular, our concern is for you first. So unfortunately, we had to stop students volunteering at shopfront. However, there's many ways that you can support. I know that Santa Maria College was one that was preparing foods that was then being provided to shopfront to distribute. Many of the schools were collecting foodstuffs and blankets and supporting that way. It is a challenge. Ours is not an organisation where you can turn up and lend a hand, but rest assured, the work that you do through LifeLink Day, all of the support that you do within the schools, it does make a difference. It is having a difference, and it is very valuable. So thank you.
Who inspires you the most?
Goodness me. Apart from Mr. Mendez down the back there, yes. Oh dear. There are so many. The reason I'm hesitating is that there are so many people that I could think of. Given that we're talking about LifeLink today, one of the things that inspires me is the people who work in those agencies, and particularly the volunteers. We've just heard the explanation as to why it's not always possible to volunteer in the way that you would like. But we saw, for example, Julie Williams, who was talking about LifeLink, how she was a bit concerned about the number of homeless people. She went to Archbishop Hickey, my predecessor, and he was the one who encouraged her to set up Shopfront. People like that. Julie works in the Archdiocese. She's just one example of tremendous generosity and sensitivity, that large-heartedness. I think when you come across people who don't just talk about helping others or talk about their faith, but who actually get in there and do something about it, that's pretty inspiring. I find that inspiring. You can look at the sort of big world stage figures. Pope Francis obviously is a very inspiring person in our own Catholic Church community and in the wider world as well. And probably the reason why he's so inspiring, not just to me but to so many people, is precisely because he's not just talk. His actions are in harmony with what he says. So I guess that's what inspires me. And it doesn't have to be somebody famous. It might be somebody that I might encounter when I visit a parish that nobody else knows about, who's doing something quite extraordinary for someone in need. So I get inspired by people whose actions are a kind of a concrete living out of the stuff that they say. So when your actions and your words are married together, I find that pretty inspiring. And there's heaps and heaps of people. Your schools are full of them who are like that. So, Don, do you want to add anything?
Yes, many years ago I came across a little fact that I didn't know, and that was that there was a woman here in Perth many years ago, a Catholic woman, who saw the need for the presence of someone like herself with faith in the nursing profession, and not in a Catholic hospital or a Catholic institute for health, but in the government system. And this woman saw it like a vocation, so she gave her entire life, firstly as a practicing nurse on the wards of hospitals. Then she gradually became a senior sister or matron within the hospitals, as they used to call them in those days. And then she became a nursing educator. So she taught other nurses. But no one knew that she was a Catholic. And she did it. She made a tremendous impact on people because behind what she was saying were the principles of the gospel. And not only that, they could see the way that she interacted with people herself, that she was a living example of how to bring the gospel alive and to live the gospel herself. So this woman, there's a park named after her in St George's Terrace, Florence Hummerston Park. There's a little tiny bit of grass with a few trees on it as you go up St George's Terrace towards Parliament House. And she lived and worked, and eventually her life ended, and she's remembered as one of those very, very important people who made such a great contribution. But she was more about showing it rather than talking about it. So that is the sort of person who really inspires me, who just gets on with the job and becomes a person able to make huge changes and to inspire other people to work with a different ethic. So that's one person that I've come to know about who has been quite impressive to me.
How do you identify or come to notice those people or agencies who are in need of LifeLink's help?
Most of the agencies that we support are ones that probably have come out of someone's desire to do something within the church. So there's some person who's come up with a vision, has seen a need, is trying to do something about meeting that need. They get going, and we look at what they're doing and we say, now that's the sort of thing that we might be able to support, or we might need to support because they're not getting much support from government or other people within our society. So those sorts of agencies come to our attention. We've got a little committee and we look at these things, or the Archbishop might get a request from a little group doing some good work, and he might say to us, is it possible for us to support them? So that's normally how it works. So all the agencies that you saw on the screen are ones that have really come to our notice, and we've supported them for the work they do as best we can. Yeah.
My name is Jung Nguyen. I'm from Mercy College, and I was wondering, what would it take for us as a Catholic community, or even as a country, for there to no longer be a need for LifeLink?
That's a great question. I think, we've got to be realistic. I don't think we'll ever get to a stage where there's no need for LifeLink because, I was saying when I was giving my talk that one of the things about the people who come to LifeLink is that we try and just welcome people as they are, accept them, don't judge them, don't demand that they tell us their story and justify why they're coming or anything like that. Often, though, people who come to some of these agencies, more often than not, I would think, through no fault of their own, as I said in the talk, their life just hasn't worked out quite the way they would want it to work out. And that will always be the case. There will always be people who, for whatever reason, find life to be more of a challenge than many of us do, more of a disappointment than many of us do. So I think there's always going to be a need for LifeLink here in the Archdiocese. I haven't got the numbers at my fingertip, but Bishop Sproxton talked about them earlier. The fact that there are so many people in Perth who benefit from LifeLink is an indication of how widespread the need is. Having said that, I think, one of the things that I was doing this morning, talking about Zacchaeus and Jesus and all the rest of it, I guess what I was doing was trying to set up the ideal. And I would hope that everybody here this morning would agree that the ideal is a fantastic thing for us to aim at. I mean, if every single one of us could react to people the way Jesus reacted to people, then there would be no need for LifeLink. So I think whilst we'll never eliminate the need and the problems and the challenges that people have in their lives, we can make an enormous difference if we commit ourselves to keeping our eyes on that ideal. People in the diocese have often heard me say that one of the things about the Catholic approach to life, and it's not unique to Catholics, but it's one of the things that's particularly characteristic of the Catholic approach to life, is that we know what our ideals are. We're also very realistic about the fact that we don't always reach the ideals. We don't always reach the goals. The thing about the Catholic approach to life, and that's why I talked earlier about the Catholic worldview or the Catholic way of looking at things. The thing about our approach, and it's not unique to us, I'm not trying to say that, but is that whilst we recognise that we're not there yet, and we've got a long way to go before we're going to get there, and we might make a few mistakes along the way, we don't give up on the ideal as the thing to which we're aiming. And one of those ideals was what I was talking about when I was talking about the way Jesus approached Zacchaeus. If we could approach people with the same heart that Jesus approached Zacchaeus, then the difference that Jesus made in Zacchaeus' life, we'll be able to make in the lives of all the people we encounter. So I think while we'll never eliminate the need for LifeLink, because we live in a broken world and nothing's perfect, and so we've got to live in an imperfect world, we can do our part to make it better, more human, really, for ourselves and for each other. So my idea is that let's keep our eye fixed on the ideal. Let's recognise that it's a worthwhile ideal for us to aim at. Let's not kind of panic if we're not there yet, but let's never fall into the trap of saying the ideal's too hard, so we're not even going to try. I think that would be the big mistake. Doesn't quite answer your question, but it's sort of, the simple answer to the question is no, there's nothing we can do to eliminate the need for LifeLink completely. But we can do a lot to make life better for an awful lot of people.
Might just add that another dimension of that question, I suppose, is the fact that generation by generation, people in the church or in society who have a large heart, is to pass on to the next generation the ability to see the needs of others. I think that's very important, because often when we're working with other people, with people who have difficulties, who are on the edges of society for one reason or another, we really need to help people see them and see now, having seen them, what can we do as a response? So it's not just something that our grandparents are really keen about, or our parents are keen about, but it's something that we need also to get a hunger for, that we, because of what we know about our faith, because we know about the vision that God has for the human family, that we're part of that story. And generation by generation, the poor are there to help us to respond, and perhaps to understand when perhaps we do feel stingy, why it is that I feel mean and I'm not generous, to come to understand who I am, and to allow the Lord then to help me change. And maybe that's another part of this mystery of the poverty and the inequality that there is, and the need for us to respond to it.
Is it in our Catholic values to be promoting LifeLink Day through social media?
I think so, and I think we're trying to do that. Brett is, that's really his field, isn't it? He's very good at the promotion of LifeLink, and that video that you saw with the Archbishop speaking earlier, Brett organised, and the website that we have, Brett has organised. So it's all a way in which, or they're all ways in which we're trying to get the message out there, and we have to use the social media, certainly, much more even.
Thank you, Bishop, yes. But as you can tell, I am old, sadly. And social media, it is the brave new world, I guess, that all of us are trying to capture. It's growing at such a fast rate. And you younger people, you have such a great opportunity. You can share communication so instantaneously. It can be so personal and so direct. And so we'd love you to share LifeLink's message, the Archbishop and Bishop's messages, as much as you can and as widely as you can. But as I wear my different hats, I'm also marketing and media manager for the Archdiocese. We'd love to hear from you. You're the next generation. You're the most important people that I can talk to. I'd love to hear from you how we can communicate better with you, what you think we should be doing. And so through LifeLink Day, if I can ask your teaching staff, one of the tasks, if you can set yourself, if you've got ideas, if you've got suggestions that you can make, not only for LifeLink, but to the Archbishop for the whole Archdiocese, we would love to hear from you. And we will certainly act on it, and we will certainly get back to you and give you feedback. So thank you for that question.
Mr. Costello, since you're the Archbishop of Perth and you're the leader of Perth, can you provide reasons why the Pope would come to Perth and how he would?
Well, I have to let you know straight up that so far he hasn't accepted any invitations to come to Australia. But if he does decide to come to Australia, we'll be certainly reminding him about Perth. I did meet Pope Francis when I was in Rome last year, and let him know where I was from exactly and how welcome he would be if he decided to come. Everybody wants Pope Francis to visit them, and let's face it, he's no spring chicken. He's getting on in years. However, when Bishop Sproxton and I go to Rome in July, we may well have an opportunity to meet him. We'll have no chance of speaking to him in Poland because there'd be probably 5 or 6 million people there. But if we get a chance to meet him, and bishops are a bit privileged, we have a special opportunity to meet the Pope once a week if we happen to be in Rome, just briefly. So we can issue an invitation and get him to come. We were a little bit tempted. Later this year, you might be aware that there's a special convention here in Perth for all of Catholic education across Australia, the National Catholic Education Convention. We were a little bit tempted to invite Pope Francis, but I'm not sure whether we got cold feet at the last minute. So we went to the next best thing, and we invited the Cardinal who's the head of, you may not be aware, but the Pope set up a small group of about 10 cardinals to be kind of like his inner cabinet, so to speak. And one of those cardinals is the chairperson of that group. So we didn't think we'd get Pope Francis, so we invited this cardinal instead, and he is coming. So he'll be here in Deb, what month? June. He'll be here in June. Cardinal Rodriguez, his name is. He's actually the Cardinal Archbishop of Honduras. But he's the head of this group of special cardinals that advises the Pope. So not quite the Pope, but not a bad, second choice. It would be great if he were to come. Actually, because the Pope, as well as being the head of the Catholic Church, is also a head of state, Vatican City is an independent state, the invitation would actually have to be issued by the Australian government. But they wouldn't do that unless the Church kind of put the hard word on them to do it. So who knows? We might be lucky. Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether he'll bring his saxophone with him. Because this cardinal plays the saxophone very well, and I understand takes it with him wherever he goes, so we might hear something of it.
And when he's not playing his saxophone, he's also got a pilot's license, so he tends to fly himself around from place to place, so a bit of a talented fellow.